Hello, and welcome to today's episode of In the Moment. I'm your host, Michael Clark, certified life coach, former therapist, and owner of Clark Coaching Services. I was a therapist for 8 years in my career and have been a life coach for almost 2 years now. And I just want to give back and share my knowledge and experience with you to try to help navigate this thing we call life. Thank you in advance for listening, and I'm so glad you're here. All right, welcome. Welcome to In the Moment podcast. I am Michael Clark, and I am here with a guest, Rachel. She will introduce herself in a moment. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that may hit home for many of you out there. And we're talking about finances, financial stability, and how to work with finances, including any financial struggles that you might be having as well. So, Rachel, I'll turn it over to you to just introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm Rachel Denton, and I am a born and raised Texan, live here in Austin, Texas, have lived here for the last over 20 years now. And I am kind of in a transitionary period, which we'll get into today because it really aligns nicely with my FIRE journey that we'll talk about. And essentially, I am focusing from a career perspective and kind of mini retirement. But in my past, I guess most recent, I have focused in operations and analytics. And I now teach classes and support digital marketing learners. And in the past, I have done that as well as kind of a side hustle. And I have also taught data analytics classes. So I am passionate about a lot of different things and really excited to be here today.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. And yeah, that's how we met. So Rachel and I met just recently and hit it off very well. So we both are part of a digital marketing course, a 10-week course where we teach adult learners about digital marketing, getting into the digital marketing field. And Rachel and I were just talking on the side, and she was telling me about a FIRE technique or process that she's gone through from a financial perspective. And I was so intrigued that I'm like, okay, I have to have you as a guest on my podcast. Because again, finances can be difficult, especially in today's economy, when we're talking about a looming recession or things in terms of just finances in general. So, Rachel, why don't you tell me a little bit about the methodology and some of the things that you've gone through to get to where you are now?
Sure. So FIRE, which we've been mentioning, is an acronym that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And really, it's all about increasing your savings as much as you can, often 50% or more, sometimes as high as 70 or 80%, to get you to a place where you can retire early. And this was something that I fell into. I guess it's a movement of sorts that I started to learn about. I was following this movement and this methodology before I even knew it really was anything. And I guess it's just a way of thinking, a way of planning. And it's once again kind of all about aggressive savings and investing, but you also kind of take on this frugality or mindful spending way of thinking. And you can definitely get a little wrapped up in it, and sometimes it can be to your detriment. But if you stay focused, you really can get to a place where you have saved up enough in retirement that you no longer need to put money towards retirement, and then you might be able to retire early.
And see, that's the fantastic part, right? Because me personally, from a retirement standpoint, I started very, very late in terms of saving for retirement. So now, to be honest, I'm kind of struggling a little bit to really trying to figure out, okay, can I retire? When can I retire? How is that going to work? So I'm starting to save now, but I wish I would have paid more attention when I was younger in terms of people saying, hey, you know what? You should start saving for retirement now. I'm like, nah, I don't need to do that. I'm young. I'm in my 20s or 30s. I don't need to basically worry about retirement. That's so far away. So I wish I would have listened to some of those people. I mean, granted, I'm starting to save now, but it's just tricky in terms of, because we still have bills to pay, right? I mean, we still have a mortgage and utilities, and we also want to like travel and have fun. So savings sometimes can be the last thing on our minds, but saving for our future and preparing for the future is so important. Now, you mentioned before that you were doing this even before you learned about it. So now you're still very young. I don't want you to tell your age, but in terms of thinking about like retirement for you, how has that journey been? I mean, have you had any struggles in the past in terms of like saving, or in terms of like any financial issues that you've had to really kind of take a step back and say, okay, I need to do something different?
I would say, honestly, the main issue I struggle with is probably saving too much and not enjoying the present. And that is something I think that folks that are part of this fire movement could possibly struggle with. But I came from a, middle class family. I had, pretty much everything I could want. But when it came to college, I had to pay for it
Yeah.
myself. And that information was told to me a little bit later than I would have liked. And
Got
it
it.
kind of set me into this mode of how can I make sure that I'm not in a lot of debt? And especially just kind of starting out my adult life, my career. And without really even realizing it, I started to adopt this mindset of wanting to save, wanting to be on top of my finances. So even
Yeah.
when I was in college, I made sure that I applied for all of the scholarships. I did 5 internships while I was in
Wow.
college. And I actually ended up paying for school myself with the support of various scholarships and internships, but I graduated without any debt and actually $10,000 saved.
Oh, wow. First of all, congratulations on that. That is fantastic. Because not many people, I mean, it's a small percentage of people who can actually say that. Because, I mean, we want to go to college, we want to have that higher education, but we also don't want the debt that's involved with that as well. So that, kudos to you for that. That is fantastic. So again, back then, I mean, were you still, do you still feel that you were kind of doing that fire method even before you even knew what it was?
Right, definitely. So, just having this mentality of mindful spending,
Hmm.
being a little frugal, those are all concepts of the fire movement, but I had never heard of the fire
Okay.
movement. And then after I graduated, I automatically would set aside one paycheck a month.
Yeah.
So I
Nice.
would get paid biweekly. Now, granted, I graduated with an engineering degree.
Mhm.
I graduated at the top of this oil and gas market. I ended up
Yeah.
going into oil and gas. I graduated with a chemical engineering degree. So my offers were good.
Hmm.
Was doing well for a 22-year-old. But even without that, I just had this mentality that I don't need a lot of things and
Yeah.
I'm just starting my life. And so I can set aside a paycheck. And I've done that for quite some time. And also, as my income had increased throughout the years, I didn't allow for what they call lifestyle creep.
Okay.
I just continued to live at the same rate as I did before and would just continue to save at this like 50%, 60% uh,
Got it. Yeah.
place.
So can you tell a little bit more about the lifestyle creep?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll even start with whenever I graduated, I had friends that were buying fancy
All
cars,
right.
were maybe even automatically buying property. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that,
Right.
but I didn't have that interest, and I wanted to ensure that once again that I lived at kind of the same pace, unless
Mhm.
of course I had to increase things with inflation.
Right.
But as I increased, or as my income increased over time, I didn't allow that to give me the space to just buy a bunch of things that I
Just to
didn't
spend,
necessarily
to
need.
spend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I am like, once again, I'm a mindful spender.
Right.
So I still, growing up, sorry, in my 20s, I
Yeah.
did a ton of travel. I
Nice.
would go on an international trip every year. I once went to Australia for 6 weeks, and
Nice.
the flight, including the flight and all of my travel, all the cool things that I did, I only spent $5,000.
Nice.
And I've just always been like that. And I just try not to allow increased income to ex- expand my spending.
Yeah, because that can be tricky, right? Because basically, the more some people have the mentality of, hey, the more you make, the more I can spend, and that meant, I mean, again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but you still have to be frugal. There was a point where I was switching careers and got wanted to take a break from corporate America, so I decided, you know what, I need a break. I can't do this anymore. So I got a job and did training as a personal trainer and worked for a gym for a while and realized that, okay, I have a lot less income than I had before. So I need to be a little bit more frugal. And it taught me just how to realize that I don't need a lot of stuff. I mean, food, clothing, shelter, the basics in terms of the hierarchy of needs from a psychological perspective. But I don't need anything like fancy, which I never really did before. That was never my lifestyle. But in terms of just the basics, and I still had fun. I still traveled. I still did things with friends. And life is too short, in my opinion, to not have fun. But there are different ways you can have fun. You don't have to necessarily buy like fancy cars or fancy clothes and or travel to exotic places like every single month or every single week. There are definitely things that you can do to still have fun and enjoy life, but also still be conscious of the money that you're spending. And that definitely sounds like that's something that is in your mentality and your wheelhouse as well, which is fantastic. That is great. Is that something that you were also grew up with in terms of your parents and how they did they have an influence on this as well?
They had an influence, but probably not in the way that you think.
Okay.
Without going into too much detail,
Mhm.
I don't want to spread, give a negative light to my parents,
Of
but
course.
they definitely made some choices that I think's a little bit more difficult from a financial perspective.
Got it.
And I think that that got me in this mindset of I want to do things differently.
Okay.
And because of that, I started to develop this mentality of I don't want to be in debt. I want to ensure that the things that I purchase, I can pay for outright.
Okay.
So, for example, all the cars that I've ever purchased, I've
Mhm.
paid in cash. I have never had any debt except for mortgage
Okay.
debt. And I just have ensured that I can maintain that even playing field with my finances and always have discretionary income and savings. Now, I do understand once again that I have come from a privileged background and that,
Mhm.
I did have a really good degree that pays
Mhm.
well. But I will note you had mentioned that you had taken a break from corporate and you had had
Yeah.
some other transitions. I actually, after doing 2 years of engineering, decided that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I ended up going back to school. And then after that, going into the marketing space and took a 55% pay cut. But I knew that that was going to make me happier, and
Yeah.
it didn't deter my thinking as far as wanting to save. And eventually, as I got older, is when I started to find different articles and different things about the fire movement. And I started
Okay.
to get really excited. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, there's other people out there like me that are thinking this way. And I started to think about what could I do? What additional steps could I take
Mhm.
to possibly retire early?
Okay.
There
So
are different types of fire, which I would love to go into.
yeah, I was just about to say let's take a deeper dive into the fire method, and let's for those who have never heard of it or want to know more about it, what does it entail?
So there are four different types of fire that I think that most people in the movement will reference. And
Okay.
one of them is lean fire. And I am going to look at my notes a little bit just to make sure I say the definitions
That's fine.
correctly. But essentially, lean fire is when you achieve financial independence. And I guess I should give a definition quickly of just what financial independence is. And
Okay.
so that is defined as the point where your invested assets generate enough passive income to cover your living expenses.
Okay.
So the goal with FIRE is kind of twofold. It's reaching financial independence so that you can retire early, but that could be way more money than maybe is manageable. So based on your lifestyle. So, for example, I would love to reach financial independence, but I probably won't unless I make a whole bunch of money somehow with the lottery. I'm not really sure. And so it's more for me about utilizing these different options within FIRE or different ways of thinking that help you to meet kind of certain milestones. And so essentially, there is just traditional FIRE, which is what I was just mentioning. You hit financial independence, you can just live off of your investments as passive income, and you don't have to work anymore. And that could be the idea is that you do it early, right? It's not at your traditional 65 age of retirement. Now, if you're not able to do that, or that's not really feasible or not something you really want to do, then there's other options, which is like lean fire, for example. And lean fire is you are trying to reach that financial independence by saving as much as possible, but and then you do hit financial independence, but it's living extremely frugally. So this could be like $40,000 a year or less. And that, of course, allows you to not have to save as much.
Okay.
Now, if that's not feasible, there are other options. There is coast fire,
Okay.
which is more what I'm in line with, or is where you save enough for retirement
Mhm.
that you no longer have to save. And
Okay.
essentially, that your money is going to grow through compound interest to allow you to retire comfortably at the traditional retirement age, which is like
Okay.
65. But so you no longer have to put money into your savings for your retirement savings, but you still have to pay your day to day bills. And so the coast fire concept is that you are coasting to retirement in regards to your retirement savings, but you still need to pick up a part-time job or something less high paying maybe than your traditional job. And that allows you to coast, but while still paying your day-to-day bills.
Got it. So in order, like, kind of like to help supplement, to basically still cover those day-to-day bills, but not so much so that basically that you are uncomfortable regarding money that you have, like in the bank and things to live life. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
essentially, I don't have to worry because I have met Coast Fire. I don't have to worry anymore about putting a percentage of my paycheck towards my retirement.
Okay.
I know that as long as the market behaves reasonably well, I say we, people in the movement estimate like 4 to 5% growth just to be super conservative in the
Okay.
market. And then essentially saying, okay, I now have enough in savings. I don't need to set that aside anymore. It'll grow at that 4 or 5% rate. And then I can live off my retirement funds comfortably at retirement age. But I want to do or I need to do a part time job in the interim until I get there just to allow me to continue to enjoy life and to pay my bills. And so that's exactly the part-time job that I am now doing,
Okay.
where I help teach classes and working with you.
Okay. So you already answered my question, but I just want to confirm that. So when you're looking at these fire methods, I'm assuming that the economy plays a huge part in that as well. I mean, you mentioned like, conservatively the 5% portion, and the economy can fluctuate up and down. So have you, in your methodology and kind of your savings, have you really had to take a close look at the economy to make sure that you and your savings and the economy, for lack of a better term, play well together?
For sure. I mean, right now, or at least in recent years, the market has been doing really well.
Hmm.
And so we're seeing, 10, 12% returns
Right.
on investments. And so being conservative, as I mentioned, like 4 or 5% can
Mhm.
help kind of buffer the times when the market is down.
Okay.
But I also will need to look at the allocation of my investments as I get older. So I have no problem mentioning my age. I think it's helpful for the conversation. I'll
Yeah.
be 40 this year,
Okay.
and I will want to look at the allocation of like stocks and bonds, for
Hmm.
example, in my portfolio so that I have less risk as I get older. Right now, I still have a decent amount of risk. I have a much higher percentage of stocks than bonds, for example. But a big kind of methodology or a big thing with the FIRE movement is there's a lot of encouragement to allow your money just to sit comfortably and
Right.
grow. And so through like index funds, for example. And it's not about doing risky day trades or
Right.
trying to get rich quick.
Yeah.
It's really just allowing your money to grow at that steady clip. But of course, keeping in mind the market and its fluctuations and making adjustments as you need to.
Now, how, I don't know if you can pinpoint this because you've been doing the fire method even before you knew about it, but looking at the one that you are focused on, how long did it take you to get to where you are now?
I That's an interesting question. I think that their fire number or
Mm.
the coast fire number is very subjective. It's up to your lifestyle. I
Okay.
probably actually hit my number quite a while ago, my
Okay.
actual true number, but because I tend to oversave,
Right.
I have kind of a scarcity mindset. I ended up doubling my original goal
Okay.
just to really make me feel comfortable, kind of to what you were talking about before. I don't know
Yeah.
what the future is going to hold.
Right.
And ideally, I would never touch those dollars that are in my investments and I would allow them to grow. But I have given myself some wiggle room so that if I need to tap into any of that money when life happens, not able to get a part-time job or just personal expenses go up, I'm able to tap in if I want to. And
Okay.
that, I guess, kind of, so the short answer to your question is I allowed myself to really embrace Coast Fire just this year. So if I say that I started right out of college without really realizing it at 22,
Hmm.
then here I am at 40, and I feel like I'm in a really good place to fully embrace Coast Fire.
Okay.
But I would say that I probably got really serious in the last decade.
Okay, nice, very cool. Now, with the fire methodology and the fire movement, um, how did you? So, you personally, for example, you don't tell me, you don't necessarily need to tell me what your number was, but how did you come up with the number in terms of how much you wanted to save?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And there are a couple of principles that us in the fire movement will keep in
Okay.
mind. And to be able to reach full financial independence, which I said might be difficult to achieve for some, is
Right.
to take your monthly expenses, get a yearly number, and multiply that by 25.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so this is based on the Trinity study, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, but it's the concept that you will have enough savings over a 30-year period for retirement, and being able to calculate what that then looks like by multiplying by 25.
Okay.
And this comes kind of reversed engineered from the 4% rule, which is that once you get to a place of financial independence and you're going to be investing from your savings, or sorry, you're going to be pulling money from your savings,
Hmm.
then you can do that at a 4% withdrawal rate.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Nice.
And that's kind of where the number comes from if you're wanting to hit full fire. Now,
Okay.
I, once again, not trying to do that where I just completely stop working because for me, I don't even live expensively, but to get 25 times that is a little bit more than I have the capacity to do at this time.
Okay.
And so for me, it was just calculating if at a 4%, 5% investment rate, I could say, okay, I need this much based on how much my current monthly expenses are. I can look at compound interest and seeing how that will grow and be able to calculate from there how much I would need in retirement.
Got it.
And
Okay.
then knowing that I would then stop my investments of retirement and then start to kind of transition into this part-time work.
Got it. Okay. Now, when you say monthly expenses, do you also include like, because people want to have fun, right? I mean, we're in life. We don't want to just sit around and like save and save and save and sit around in front and watching Netflix all day. We want to like basically do things. We want to go out. We want to travel. We want to like maybe have dinner with our partners or what have you. So, in your monthly expenses, did you calculate, for example, entertainment or fun and stuff like that? Or is it just like your monthly expenses like mortgage or rent, utilities, cable, Wi-Fi, things like that? So when you say monthly expenses, can you tell me a little bit more about what is actually in that calculation or what that includes?
Yes. So for me, I'm a huge fan of budgeting, and I don't
Okay.
think that a budget should be restrictive. For
Mhm.
me, it's just gathering data, allowing you to stay on track. And so when I am calculating my monthly expenses, I definitely put in money for fun. I put in a certain amount for kind of dining out,
Yeah.
going to grab drinks and food with friends, as well as travel. And then, of course, just my bills that I have to pay. Those, of course, are variable too, right? So when we go outside of the bills of just getting a roof over our head and food, I also incorporate, things like my cell phone, any streaming services that I
Right.
have. And then, if those things that allows me to cut from my budget if needed, right?
Yeah.
So I don't need to have all of those things, but I want to have those
Right.
things. And so I am still a little conservative and just I am frugal, but
Mhm.
I allow myself within my frugal mentality to still have a really great time and still go
Yeah.
travel. So I
Yeah.
definitely do that.
Very good. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I talked about in my podcast earlier when I was talking about financial stability is how important budgeting is. You really need to know where your money is going. You need to know where it's going and where it's coming from and having that comparison. So, in a little bit of my history and the things I talked about in my earlier podcast is that I followed some of the methodologies of Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey in terms of just financial stability in terms of, okay, I need to know where my money is. I need to know what's going out. I need to know how much I have. And I still to this day keep it's a electronic version, but I keep an electronic version of a checkbook. A lot of people don't even know what a checkbook is these days. So it's kind of funny, but I sit every time I go to a grocery store. I stop before I leave the grocery store, put the amount in my checkbook so I'll know how much money I have left, how much money, and I budget everything. Every one of the Dave Ramsey's quotes, every dollar has a purpose. And that's how I live my life as well. So me too. I mean, the only debt that I have is my mortgage. And that's it. I have no credit card debt. I have no car payments. I have nothing like that. So any additional money that I might have does go to savings and also goes to my business at this point as well in terms of trying to grow that. But that is also kind of looking out for my future as well. So I love that. Can you talk about, I know you just did a little bit, but can you talk about the importance of budgeting?
For sure. Yeah. I'm a huge numbers data nerd.
Yeah.
I mentioned I have an engineering background and I worked in analytics. So to me, data is power. It's great knowledge. And so first, I think there's the difference between tracking and budgeting.
Yeah.
And tracking is really giving you that baseline, this kind of status quo of how much do I spend. You can think of it as almost like when you're trying to get an understanding of how much you eat, for example, if you have like a weight loss goal, right? It's very similar, but this, of course, is getting a baseline of how do you spend, where do you spend, what categories do you spend in, and
Yeah.
then from there, creating a budget that is attainable. And but like I said, I don't think that budgets should be restrictive. They should just be tools to help support you to reach your goals. And so you might have a baseline budget, but it's going to adjust over time as your bills, your lifestyle, the things, in your life change. And you want to be able to be flexible in that. You had mentioned the way that you do budgeting. I use apps to help me. You may have heard of YNAB. It stands for You Need a Budget. That's my favorite one. And their philosophy, which I didn't realize was maybe tied to Dave Ramsey, I'm not sure, but the whole thing is that every dollar has a job. And so the way that the app is set up, it allows you to build out these budgeting categories, and you can connect to your various bank accounts, credit card, whatever it might be. And as you spend money and as you have your income, all of that will come into the app. And then it essentially is saying, okay, you have this money coming in from your paycheck, give it a job.
Yeah.
Give each one of those dollars a job, and that will go towards your various budgets. And then you can keep track as you spend, right? Am I getting close to that budget that I've set? Am I going over? So then over time, you can start to see trends and you can make adjustments accordingly.
All right, that's fantastic. I love that. But yeah, and people sometimes don't, especially young adults, they don't necessarily realize how important budgeting is and how important it is to have like every dollar have a purpose or something for it to do, be it like savings, be it like making sure you have money to pay your bills and things of that sort. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to talk about fire?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention the two other types of fire.
Yes, perfect.
So I had mentioned well, actually, I guess there might be five total if you want to just say traditional fire,
Okay.
traditional financial independence. I mentioned lean fire, which
Hmm.
is living extremely frugally. Then there's also fat or chubby fire, and
Okay.
that's kind of
I
the
love I
opposite.
love these names, by the way.
I know, it's awesome. That's the complete opposite of lean fire.
Okay.
And that's, you're living the dream. You are doing so well financially, and you set aside a significant nest egg, and you're living very well off of your passive income from your
Okay.
investments. And most likely you have gone beyond that times 25 yearly amount.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, this is not where I'm at personally. As I mentioned, there's also Coast Fire, which
Okay.
is kind of where I'm at, being able to set aside enough for retirement so that you don't have to anymore, but getting some kind of part-time job. And then there's Barista Fire, which is very similar to Coast Fire in that you are going to take on a part-time job, something like maybe a barista position is kind of where it came from, something
Okay.
part-time that ideally would provide health insurance. Us being in the US,
Uh,
insurance is most of the time tied to your job. And so allowing you to live that less stressful, ideally less high income lifestyle to get your bills paid, but you maybe haven't reached your full retirement goals yet.
okay.
So it's kind of that lower tier, but you are very well on your way to having all of your retirement savings ready to go.
Got it. Okay. I love that. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second. So, two questions for you. One, you've reached your coast fire. Now, is your goal to are you happy with where you are, or are you looking to go to what was it, fat fire or the other fire? Are you looking to move up to that level, or what is your next goal?
Yeah, so I have done corporate work my whole career, and I also took on quite a bit of what we call side hustles that have led me to get to the point that I'm at. Sometimes I was doing maybe four or five jobs at the same time,
Okay.
and that's another thing with the fire movement is there's a lot of encouragement to take on side hustles or take on property
Hmm.
or invest in property so that you can continue to support your goals. I
Okay.
did that and I got very burnt out. So
Okay.
starting in January of this year is when I left corporate and decided that I wanted to take a break. It would be awesome if it was a permanent break and that I was able to just do part-time things, do consulting on the side, and really be in charge of how I bring in my money. But my partner and I are wanting to have a child, so
Yes.
children are expensive. And that, of course, might change my plans. I might decide that living in this kind of part-time income state is not going to give me enough wiggle room to have fun and do
Right.
things with my child and my family. And so, once again, it's that being able to be flexible in your plans, being flexible in your budgets. So, right now, short term goal, stay where I'm at, stay with the part time lifestyle. This will allow me to have time with my future child. We won't have to do daycare, things like that. But you just never know what life has in store.
That is true. Very true. So, another question for you. So, you are almost 40 and you started fire even before you knew it was happening when you were in your 20s. I personally am well beyond 40. So, is it too late? Is there an age limit in terms of when you can or should start fire where it's beneficial?
No, I don't think so at all. And I think that because it's more about the mentality of just mindful spending, budgeting, at any age, right, you can start to aggressively save. And that's really those different concepts, the mindful spending, the aggressive savings, frugality, things like that, are really at the heart of the fire movement.
Okay.
And of course, ideally, you would start earlier because then you have more runway of time for your money to grow through compound interest. But you can start at any time.
Okay.
And it's really about shifting that mentality, finding ways to cut expenses, but not have a good time in life, wanting to still make sure that you're setting aside money for the extras in life,
Oh,
but ensuring that there's a balance. And I think that the sooner you can get started, the better. But today
right.
is a perfect day to get going.
No, I love that. That is awesome. Today is a perfect day to get going. That's fantastic. So, if someone wants to find out more about the fire method and the fire movement and how to get started and where to start and have their questions answered, where can they go?
There's a lot of really great resources. I would say main person that kind of started this movement, I'm not
Mhm.
sure if that's completely accurate to say, but he's very
Okay.
well known in the community, is
Okay.
Mr. Money Mustache.
Okay.
And
Mr. Money Mustache. Okay.
yes, call out to him if he hears this. And essentially, he has a website. I believe it's just Mr. Money, but you can Google Mr. Money Mustache. And he's at least had a very strong voice in the fire movement. I
Okay.
believe he is a family of four and they live off of $25,000 a year.
Wow. That is amazing. So,
Yes.
yes.
And so he has a lot of really great resources. He has a blog, and that would be a really great place to start. There
Okay.
also are other resources. Another podcast that's really great is the Choose FI podcast, and that's focused on the fire mentality, financial independence. And then there's some books that are kind of like the gospel, if you will.
Okay.
There's Your Money or Your Life.
Okay.
I actually might be saying that wrong, so
Okay.
I think I'll get the title.
Okay.
But
Got it.
essentially, there's a lot of really great resources, and I would start with those two and
Okay.
just do a little bit of Googling and just learn a little bit about fire in general. There's also the fire subreddit on Reddit, and they have
Okay.
the different subreddits that are associated with those different types of fire. So like
Okay.
coast fire and lean fire, fat fire, things like that. So I
Got
would
it.
just dive into those different resources.
All right, that is perfect. That is a lot of information for people to get started. That's fantastic. All right. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything more that you want to tell the listeners?
I don't think so. I would just say that There is so much to look forward to and so much that is in your control in regards to finances, even when you
Yeah.
just start small. And of course, it would be so nice to be able to reach fat fire, chubby
Yeah.
fire, but that doesn't always have to be everybody's goal. And I think just
No.
setting aside a little extra for your future is going to, put you on the right track. So really that's it. I'm really excited that I was able to tell you a little bit about this. This is obviously something that I'm really passionate about, and I would love for more people to feel comfortable in control of their finances.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's not easy sometimes. But the point is that there is help out there. There's methodologies out there. There's people out there that can help. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I appreciate it. This information is fantastic. So
Awesome.
thank
Yeah,
you for
thank
your
you.
time and thank you for being here. And yeah, other than that, I think we can wrap it up. So I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. See ya.